Well, a very good afternoon. Thanks for clicking on to the Wednesday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. Hope you've had a chance to look at the all-important winter forecast. Albeit late, it has been released on markvoganweather.com. And I'm calling for colder than last year, which certainly wouldn't be hard, of course. But I do think we are going to see spells of winter weather. How much we get this year all remains to be seen, of course. And but there's certainly plenty of positives in terms of the overall driving mechanisms that are in place this year versus last year. Opposites, in fact, when it comes to things like the Indian Ocean Dipole, the Arctic Oscillation, the polar vortex, the Madden-Julian Oscillation. All these factors are quite different than last year. So hopefully we will see something more resembling winter this year compared to last year. Having a quick look first and foremost at the stratospheric temperature here, and you can see here that the GFS certainly indicates that there is going to be certainly some pulling, some pushing and tugging around of the polar vortex. Nothing imminent just yet in terms of a split or a complete collapse of the stratospheric polar vortex, which of course would be a sudden stratospheric warming. But there are certainly indications that there is attack going on from out with the vortex towards the polar vortex, and that in a sense is putting a lot of pressure, friction, and it's slowing down these zonal winds up at the 50 HPA. So that is certainly a positive factor, because it means to say that essentially we should have a weaker jet stream, a weaker polar jet stream circling the northern hemisphere. And when you get that, there is a lot more potential, at least, for warm areas of high pressure to lift from the mid latitudes up into the high latitude region and allowing that discharge of Arctic air south. So there is at least pressure being put in the vortex, if you will, that is hopefully going to allow, or at least open up a better opportunity for cold weather as we go through the remainder of the month. Now, if you did see the forecast, I have mentioned that we could see a spell of fairly benign, fairly disappointing winter weather, mild, a return to more positive Arctic Oscillation, North Atlantic Oscillation. The time frame that I've got within the forecast is, of course, very much subject to change, and that will be the case. Even if I do get the overall aspect right, that we get a sudden stratospheric warming, say during the middle of January, which unleashes much colder weather by the time we reach the end of January into the month of February. We may get it sooner than that. We may get a warm-up for Christmas and New Year, and then all of a sudden it turns cold at the beginning of January, or in fact we may not get anything at all. Who knows? So it's going to be an interesting time to watch weather as we head through the month of December and into the month of January, watching the behaviour of the polar vortex, because I do think there is at least a good opportunity here to see something a lot more colder, and there is a possibility of having a beast from the east type event as we go into the latter half of January and into the month of February this year. So I'm certainly hopeful that we can see something a lot more interesting this year. But I want to look actually at the month of January here. Now this is the 10. This is actually the 10 HPA temperature, the polar vortex situation as we get into the month of January. And you notice here that there is a lot of warming coming off Asia across the top of the pole, so pushing the vortex towards North America and towards Europe here. So that's quite an interesting thing. So this is, of course, the whole month of January averaged out. So this would be the mean setup here in the upper level of the stratosphere for the month of January. But I want to look at the 500 millibar heights here of the GFS, because it is quite interesting, or should I say the CFSV2. Notice here that it has a lot of blocking extending from Scandinavia over to Greenland, over a good chunk of the Arctic. In fact, we've got above normal heights here, and we've got a trough slightly to the west of the British Isles here. So that necessarily wouldn't be the coldest of scenarios based on where the position of the trough is. But what is interesting is if you look at the 850 millibar temperature anomaly, it basically overwhelms the pattern with warm weather, which I don't think is the case. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense based on the 500 millibar anomaly here. So I'm really interested to see the CFSV2 at least showing that that's a negative Arctic oscillation and potentially negative North Atlantic oscillation, but it just doesn't see any cold weather. It doesn't see any cold air in the pattern either. So it's certainly something worth watching as we go forward here, folks. So just a few thoughts. Hope you have a great day, and I'll be back in the next few days with more. Bye for now.